To properly install the Voyager hardware, first, place your motorcycle on a clean, flat surface. Find all of the parts included in your Voyager kit. Remove the front cover and the side covers from the motorcycle. Remove the center kickstand. Note, the bolt on the right side of the kickstand has left-hand threads. Next, remove the bolts from the entire exhaust system and lower it to the floor and leave it under the motorcycle. Take the left and right foot pegs off. Then find the left and right foot peg attachments and the new foot peg bolts supplied with the kit. Install the foot peg attachments and the foot pegs on both sides of the motorcycle. Do not tighten these bolts at this time. Now, completely reinstall the exhaust system. It is very helpful to use 2 jacks as shown. Use extreme caution when installing the headers. These bolts are very easy to cross-thread. To avoid cross-threading, make sure you can make 4 full turns using just your fingers. After installing all of the nuts on both headers, tighten them and torque to 9 foot-pounds. Find the center brackets. They are marked for left and right. Also, find the bolts that were removed from the center kickstand and the bushing that was removed with the right bolt. Install the left center bracket using the bolt that was removed from the left side of the center kickstand. Do not tighten at this time. Install the right center bracket using the bolt and bushing that was removed from the right side of the center kickstand. Note, this bolt has left-hand threads. Do not tighten at this time. Now, hang the bracket bolts as shown, and then tighten the bolts on the brackets. Remember, the right side bolt has left-hand threads. Now, hang the bolts on the foot peg brackets. Find the main belly bracket and the rear arm assembly, 4 attachment bolts and locking nuts, and lay them on a clean, flat surface for assembly. To assemble, first, make sure the plate welded to the rear arm assembly is on the bottom. Then, make sure the main belly bracket is lined up as shown. Place the rear arm assembly on top of the main belly bracket. Install the bolts and locking nuts and tighten them. Place this assembly under the motorcycle and line it up as shown. Hang the assembly and tighten all of the bolts. Tighten the foot peg bolts and then reinstall the covers. After installing the wheels and tires on the Voyager, place the crossbar of the Voyager directly behind the rear tire of the motorcycle and install a kickstand on the rear of the Voyager. With the motorcycle in neutral, push it backward over the crossbar and rest it on the kickstand. Now, install the jack stands on the receiver of the Voyager belly bracket. Install the jack stand opposite the kickstand first. Install the other jack stand and make sure the motorcycle is straight up and down. After making sure the motorcycle is straight up and down, remove the Voyager kickstand. Push the Voyager into place and install both front attachment bolts with a spacer and lock washers and torque them to 80 foot-pounds. Remove both jack stands and measure from the rear wheel of the motorcycle to the hub plate of the Voyager. Measure both sides and make sure the measurement is the same. If it isn't, loosen the belly bracket and straighten the Voyager. Tighten the belly bracket and measure the rear of the Voyager again. Repeat this procedure until both sides measure the same. Now, we will begin the rubber damper suspension installation. Take the rubber damper bonded to the mounting plate and slide it between the suspension fork and leaf springs until snug. Be sure the plate is resting against the leaf springs. Put 2 bolts through the damper mounting plate, then around the leaf springs and through the rubber damper bonded to the mounting plate. Use the 2 lock nuts and hand thread them onto the bolts. Tighten them completely. Locate the 4 suspension U-bolts, 2 lock blocks, 2 suspension plates, 8 hex nuts, and 8 lock washers. Place 2 suspension U-bolts over the rear of the Voyager frame and through the suspension U-bolt plate. Hand thread a hex nut and lock washer on each suspension U-bolt end. Do not tighten at this time. Place the leaf springs on top of the suspension U-bolt plate and underneath the Voyager frame. Then place the tapered end of the suspension fork on the bearing receiver. Locate the suspension lock block. Place the lock block over the leaf springs and under the Voyager frame. Tighten the hex nuts, but leave loose enough to adjust the suspension fork. Repeat each step on the opposite side suspension fork before tightening completely. Adjust the suspension fork so it aligns in the center of the bearing receiver. The outside diameter of the K-preen roller bearing should be 3/16 inside the tapered end of the suspension fork. Once the suspension fork is properly adjusted, tighten the hex nuts on the suspension U-bolts completely. Then torque them to 35 foot-pounds. Now install the rear mudguard and your motorcycle is ready to ride.